Welcome to Expose the Podcast. This is a special edition. It's not too special, but I'm by myself today, but I'm not by myself today. I don't have my normal co-host, Laverne Badger. I'm Natalie Hayden. We will be bringing in a guest that will come and sit with us for this month of February. And I just want to say welcome. Thank you all for returning and coming back to listen to what it is that we have to say. We simply are a podcast where we bring awareness, education, and prevention techniques and skills to add to your toolbox along the lines of domestic violence because we are thrivers of life after abuse and domestic violence. So, once again, welcome back to Expose the Podcast. It feels a little weird not having Laverne here because we have our little, she's my yin to the yang. But typically, what we would normally say is, like, hey, what's going on? How was your week? And I'll tell you, like things have been going pretty good. And I will say that for the month of February, we are speaking on the awareness month of teen dating violence. And so with that, I just want to throw out a few announcements. Laverne and I are definitely in full support of any type of prevention of violence and especially domestic violence with our youth. And for February, we do have the Teen Summit that is coming up February 28th. So if you haven't registered for that, it is free and it is online and it's a virtual experience. We'll be there and we're totally in support of that for our youth just to get some education, some preventative tools to add to your toolbox and some awareness with that. Just things we just don't know about the whole wheelhouse of violence and how to prevent it and to make sure that you're not a part of it. Either you're giving it or you're receiving it type thing. So today we have a young person. However, she is extremely wise and she's boots to the ground. She's an advocate. She is a trendsetter. She is a trailblazer in the community here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. And I'm going to bring her in just a moment. But I think it's really important that we provide spaces and we provide a platform for our young people to definitely voice and share what it is that they're dealing with because what I say, what better way to know than to hear from the horse's mouth, we would say. So without further ado, I'm going to bring on our guest speaker today, Imani Ray.
Hello. Thanks so much for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Expose the Podcast again, because this isn't your first time.
Nope, not my first rodeo.
Absolutely. So let's get started. Like, what's going on? Like, how are you doing? Like we got the whole pandemic going on. And what's new with you? What do you want the world to know what's going on with Imani Ray?
Absolutely. Once again, thank you so much for having me. I'm excited about this opportunity, especially about the topic for sure. But as people know, if they tuned into the first episode, I have a brand called Natural. It was called Naturally Beautiful. I went through a rebranding phase this year at the top of the year and renamed it Natural E. Just to have it more of an inclusive brand. And I'm really excited about that because I've been able to really connect with some awesome people so far with the rebrand and just continue to expand my brand to newer audiences and connect with new people. So I'm excited about that. And I still am working very, very heavily in the community with our young people and constantly spreading just that message of self love and affirmation to everyone I'm able to connect with.
Man, that is right up my alley because there's nothing like self-love. And sometimes, as adults and let alone young adults, we don't know where to even start that path. So can you share a little bit about where that even began for you? When did you realize like, okay, this is something different and this is something that I have to really take hold hold closely to my own heart and not allow anyone else to predict that type of love for self?
I think for me, I personally understood the value of self love during my high school career. And when I started my brand, because my brand was built off of my own insecurities and creating shirts and writing a blog to uplift myself during those difficult times, I started to realize how much of an impact it had on my life once I started to be more conscious about my positive self talk and what I say when I look at myself in the mirror, and how much of an impact that had on my relationships with others.
Yeah.
A lot of people say, how can you expect other people to love you if you don't love yourself? And I don't necessarily agree with that, because I feel like those things can be happening in tandem. But it's, you see a huge difference when you're able to have that own love for self, and it's
Mhm.
how you interact with other people and what you tolerate when it comes to your interactions with other people as well.
You better say that.
It's just very, very important. And I'm so glad that I was able to recognize how important it was. And I'm not saying that to say that I have figured it all out, because every day is another journey of me figuring out what that looks like. How can I love myself today? How can I be
Mhm.
careful about how I'm treating myself today? Self care, all of that. Like, I'm on this journey every day, and that's the whole point of my brand, and bringing people on that journey with me.
Man, we just really thank you. I thank you personally for just having the courage to, many of us young people, or when I was young, I had no idea what self-love was. And so it's really just, an action, and you're advocating for yourself, first of all, to first love you before you allow anyone else to determine and set the landscape for what love looked like for you.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really awesome. And how do you are you out in the schools? How do you get your brand out?
Mainly, especially during COVID, I'm just pretty much doing online curbside pickup, and just having those resources available. I do a lot of marketing and promotion online, and that was the whole purpose of me doing the rebrand, and just
Mhm.
like revamping all of my marketing materials and having my branding be consistent. So when people see Natural E, they know, like, where it's coming from. They know, what brand is connected to. And that was very, very important for me. So I think for me personally and my brand, online has been a huge tool. Social media has been a huge tool for me. Twitter,
Mhm.
Facebook, Instagram, like literally every social media platform you can think of. I try to make sure I have my brand represented on those platforms, especially with COVID. A lot of people have been online, and finding online shopping, just connecting with brands.
Mhm. Now, I do have a question. With COVID, we're still in the pandemic, but at the peak of it, when we talk about self-love, how did that really take a toll on you? And like we have a brand that we stand on. And did you ever find yourself sort of shaken and just like questioning, all the things that you said that you love about yourself in this moment of like, okay, what does I have to redefine something? What's going on here?
Absolutely. I had a lot of moments. It was I came to a lot of crossroads where I was just like, okay, let me revisit my plan. What am I doing with my life? Am I getting too comfortable? Especially with us having to be in working from home and doing everything from home for a long period.
Mhm.
I'm a young adult that lives alone. Even before I got my dog, I was just like and I was living in a studio apartment in those four walls, and I was just like, I'm going to go crazy. Like, I really don't know. Like, every day was the same routine. Get up, hop on those Zooms for staff meetings, and getting my work done. Maybe going outside to check the mail for a little, like, something different in the day.
Mhm.
It was just really routine, and I love structure and routine, but even too much structure and routine can drive somebody crazy. So I was definitely in some spaces where I'm like, okay, I got to do something different. And I started to get in the space of promoting my brand again. And there was a lot of ups and downs with my brand, and just
Mhm.
losing income, increasing income, just like all over the place. And there was one point, pivotal moment during the pandemic, where I was just like, I'm just gonna risk it all and put it all on the line and just really promote my business and go hard with that. And it was one time where I had orders, like my whole entire studio apartment floor was covered with orders. I put a message out on Twitter, like, and I tried like a new design, and I started selling jogging suits, and everybody responded so well to it, and it was amazing. And that was one of the biggest highlights of my business, and I've been in business for 6 years, so that was a huge highlight for me.
I wanna tell you that I ended up getting me, some of those joggers where it says "Love yourself," and they're some of the most comfortablest, and I'm really tall, and
Mhm.
they are really long and they fit me. Yes. So I am a huge yes, I was able to benefit from that. So thank you very much. And it was during the pandemic. I think I did get it from the Bronzeville Collective. And so want to shout them out and thank you so much for still pushing through and being creative during this time. So let's go ahead and just hop right into the thick of things when we talk about February is youth dating violence, teen dating violence. We got the summit coming up at the end of the month. Are you going to be participating in that at all?
I wish I was this year. I am gonna tune in and check it out. But this year I missed the deadline to get my workshop in, and I've been attending that teen summit since I was a teen. So I'm in huge support of
Oh,
everything that they do. And I've been, you know, impacted by that summit for years, and I think it's absolutely amazing how it continues to expand every year and impact
mhm.
more young people every single year. And the feedback, because last year was my first time presenting on my own, because in the past I've presented with the organization I was with, and then I co-facilitated with one of my close friends, and then last year I did it by myself, and I did a love yourself workshop. And the feedback
Mm.
from those young people and how much they valued that conversation, they hadn't had that conversation previously before attending the workshop. It just was, that was life changing for me. And so I definitely want to tune in. Even though I can't facilitate, I'm excited to see what the other facilitators are going to bring to the table.
So, if you could speak to a youth that has never attended the Teen Summit,
Mhm.
what would you say to them?
I would definitely say walk into it with an open mind, and like, I would say for me, I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was really excited. I thought it was going to be this dope retreat in the Dells. Like, it's about to be lit. And it absolutely was lit, and a learning experience at the same time. The most lit learning experience I've ever
That's a new one, lit learning.
had.
Yes.
That's the most lit learning experience I've ever had. And because they're so mindful about youth engagement and like having young people at the forefront of these conversations, having young people engaged in these conversations, making space for young people. And because I was a part of youth organizations as a young person, they taught me the importance of not having conversations about youth without youth at the table. And so
Hello, somebody. Yes.
they really highlight young people. Like, they have youth keynote speakers, youth facilitating workshops, youth facilitating roundtable discussions. Youth get to decide literally how the whole agenda of the event goes, even to the like all the different activities that they have. Young people are planning those. Like, last year I got a chance to take some of my young people from the organization I work for, and all the parties and different like breakout sessions and fun things that they have on the schedule. Like, they let young people really take leadership and charge for something that's created for them. And I think that's amazing.
So created for them and eventually at some point by them, right? What would you say to a parent that would be interested in sending their child maybe next year, or even signing their child up for the virtual, their young person up for this virtual experience?
Yeah, I would definitely say trust the process. It can be nerve wracking, especially depending on what kind of relationship you have with your teen. And there's some tough conversations that are going to happen around
Hmm.
self-care, depression, healthy sexual relationships, healthy relationships in general with your parents, with your, family, with your, partners. All of those conversations, all those uncomfortable conversations are really important. And it may be unsettling to know that you're sending your child away to be a part of those conversations without you, but trusting that process and knowing it's going to be a learning experience for them, and just being mindful about when they come back, how can you engage them in furthering those conversations with you.
I think that's awesome. Thank you so much. So we're talking about uncomfortable conversations. So let's go ahead and jump right into youth violence. And here in the city of Milwaukee, I'm sure, and I feel like it's just all over the nation where there is an increase of youth violence. Particularly dating violence,
Mhm.
since it is Teen Dating Violence Awareness Month. So let's sort of unpack that. What are your thoughts about youth violence and why do you think the increase?
I think I have a lot to say, but I'm gonna try to make sense of all of my thoughts. I think it's a lot to it, and I'm getting up there in age, so there's a little bit of a gap and a divide between, you know, the teens, and I'm in my early 20s, mid 20s, and it's unfortunate that like those same struggles that we see happening within those teen relationships are happening in our early 20s, happening in our 30s and our 40s, and even older. And I think it's very important that you're a part of this preventative work, and we're having conversations like this so we can kind of nip that in the bud at an early age, so that young men and women aren't experiencing that in their future. And I'm saying all that to say that I think it's unfortunately been normalized. When we think about
Mhm.
my generation in particular, when we look at the celebrity relationships, when we look at the social media conversations that are happening, what people think is hilarious on TikTok and Instagram, and the little skits that people are doing, like it's so normal. Like there's so many different like challenges on TikTok where there's these couples that people love to watch, and they're pranking each other, and putting their hands on each other, and just harming each other or talking badly, and like really showing examples of like distrust in the relationship, and those cheating pranks and stuff like that. Like all of that is a part of our culture, and like I'm like, even speaking for myself, I'm scrolling on TikTok and I see those videos and I'm laughing, and I'm like, then you kind of realize and come back to reality, like that's not, those are some of the signs that we should be aware of. And
Mhm.
when you see people respond dramatically in those videos when they're pranking their partner, like a cheating prank or something like that, like that's you're getting a look into what their relationship may be like on a day-to-day basis, and that's just what we're
Mhm.
seeing on camera. Imagine what's going on behind the scenes. And I think with things being so heavily on social media these days, a lot of things are much more prevalent. The signs are definitely there. Like, but I think the biggest issue is that one, we aren't recognizing the signs when they're in our face, and two, a lot of the times when we're not recognizing the signs is because it's being normalized. Like
Mhm.
it's being normalized on all of these social media platforms, so we kind of accept it and we normalize it ourselves.
So you talk about normalizing and just certain types of behavior. And I want to say like it's definitely a part of this culture, and all of us are experiencing it because if you think about the last presidency that we were just in, I used the analogy that we were all in an abusive relationship. And I mean, it felt like there was so much normalization, like, oh, this is just what it is, and we just accept it, but it still doesn't take away that you're being traumatized and you're being abused and you're experiencing, so many other issues, and we're lacking to identify, maybe an exit strategy, or to say something to someone, or to say, hey, I'm really not feeling this, or I really don't think this is okay. I'm just going along with it. What do you suggest, and how do you think, young people can maybe turn away from that idea of, nor how do you shift the narrative? I guess that's my question.
Say, I did hear you. I just want to make sure I'm hearing the question right. Can you just restate?
How do you shift the narrative from normalization?
Good question. I think more of these conversations, I definitely think more intergenerational conversations, and a lot of the time we aren't being mindful of the fact that the older generation, they've been here before, they've had
Mhm.
these relationships before, they may have been in an abusive relationship, or they haven't because they learned from their parents. So having these tough conversations, I think, is a huge part of getting away from normalizing it. And sometimes when you say it out loud, I know for myself, I've been in some relationships, and some relationships that have been toxic and unhealthy. And sometimes saying it out loud to my friends, or, just mentors, I'm like, wait, like that's not like, that doesn't sound right. I should probably walk away from that situation. So I think that's one of the healthiest ways of handling it, is just kind of having those conversations with people that you trust, because you may not realize it on your own.
I totally get that and understand it. Now, I know that Laverne and I, we always have questions about this whole bystander. I don't want to call it syndrome, but you have the friend that's in this horrible toxic relationship, and you are very clear and aware of the signs that, yeah, this could really turn ugly. Or, I've actually experienced it when I was in high school. I'll never forget it. where it was a group of us that hung out. And I mean, it was just a couple that dated within the relationship, and they were just so physically abusive with each other. And we just sort of laughed it off, like, haha, like they're crazy type thing, what is going on with them? But that could turn tragic, in a blink of an eye. And how do we, or how do you suggest a young person not just be a bystander?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think it's the biggest thing is recognizing those signs, and back to that conversation about normalizing it. I'm just thinking right away when you ask that question is just I think about my Twitter thread, and a lot of the times, like even yesterday, I read a tweet where a young lady was just like, made a comment like it's just as simple as walking away. If a man isn't doing what it is that you ask him to do, like just walk away. And then all the other young ladies were under the thread like, yeah, like it's so simple, like why don't they just walk away? I'm sick of hearing women complain about the same thing and staying in that relationship. And it really upset me because especially knowing what that's like to feel like you're stuck in a relationship, like
Mm-hmm.
seeing that thread and that it was really disheartening because like as women, the least I would love to see is like how can we be there to support each other? Like even if you tried your best to step in that situation and help her understand like how to get out or help her understand that she should walk away, like I think that's more important. Even if you're sick of telling her for the 50th time, like even if you don't want to hear about it anymore, like you could be saving someone's life by reminding her one more time.
Yeah.
You can change the trajectory of her life and the decisions that she makes just by reminding her one more time or saying that one more time or having that conversation one more time. So with that question that you asked, like especially me thinking through that yesterday after reading that tweet, I just really think sometimes people get comfortable in that bystander position because they're like, oh, like we done had this conversation before. You done been in this same type of relationship 52 times. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it's something about that 53rd time
Yeah.
after you say it a million times, and being able to recognize like, dang, this person may be right. And if they go back, especially if it's not an abusive situation, like just being patient with your friends as they struggle through that, because a lot of the times it's connected to deeper issues, an issue of lack of self-love, an issue
Mm-hmm.
of that needing that companionship or the codependency that you have on another person. It's so many different things, and you just never know what people are going through when you're not around. And so I think it's important as a bystander or as a friend, like to just step in and when you do have the opportunity, don't like. And after I read that, I realized, and so many people have responded to it, I realized that that was also normal, and that people are like getting fed up versus just like supporting another time, giving them another chance.
Yeah, so I find that interesting because I mean that's something that me and Laverne talks about all the time. And just when you're on the journey and supporting someone, and sometimes the journey just seems so daunting and overwhelming for you that you're just like, well, is this working? And like you said, that patience and just having and maybe just going at it one more time, or saying, hey girl, I believe in you, I'm here to support you, that goes a long way. So I feel like what you're saying to young individuals, young people that may have witnessed or seen, their friend go through or are experiencing some form of abuse, let's just call it what it is, that they would say something, continue to say something, and don't back off. And I say, I want to treat people the way that I treat people, the way you want to be treated. If I'm in something, I'm expecting someone to, tell me over and over again until I get it,
Yeah.
and some people, they may not have that, the strength to stick around and do that. But if you don't, I say, allow someone else to step in and do that, and make sure that they're not being a bystander and allowing their friend to sort of go down in that way. So yeah, that's really important. Is there anything else that you think that would be necessary for us to highlight for teen violence and awareness and prevention and education? Is there something that the adults need to know, or the teachers even, or anyone, the parents even? So on how to help their young person maybe combating and deal with this and support them in the best way?
That's a good question. And for me, I would say, especially for parents, more so for mentors and like people who are working with young people, it's very important that you build that safe space and when it comes to conversations with young people. So I'm just reflecting on my career in youth work. And I've been working with young people since I was 16 years old. And I love it simply because I'm able to build those relationships on trust and have them be comfortable in a space where they can be vulnerable with me. And I think that's so important because I think about those same young people I've been working with since I was 16, and I still have amazing relationships with them to this day. And one of the biggest things, this was really my first time initiating those, that safe space for conversations. When I was about 18 or 19 years old, I was working at Urban Underground, and I created this box in my office. Got a little box from the dollar store, and I had a notepad and a pen next to it. And everybody had their own little drawer where they can write me a note if they felt like it was something they wanted to talk about. And when I tell you, those sticky notes range from conversations about struggles with their parents, relationship issues, losing their virginity, all kinds of things that they would never, talk to their parents about or even want to say out loud. And each day I would respond to their notes and put a note back in the drawer for them to have that conversation with me on paper. And then I always told them, if you want to have a more in-depth conversation, come into my office. And they always knew my office was a safe space. They would come in after school, come in, close my door, like, this is a one-on-one conversation. I just need to talk to you about what's going on in my life. And I never responded out of a place of judgment. Now I done told them, don't make me don't make me have to get on you today. And I just had to give them a look more often than not, of just like, I want to make sure you're doing what's best for you. Like I always told them that I've had
Yeah.
young people in some horrible, horrible, horrible relationships. And I always just remind them, like, how is this benefiting you? What do you need
Mhm.
to do? Do you need to remove yourself from this situation so that you can focus on yourself? Like, you're young, like really just encouraging them and not telling them that they can't be in a relationship, not telling them that they can't date, or even telling them that they can't have sex. Like, I'm not going to tell you what you can and can't do, but I am going to absolutely make sure you're being safe and that you're being smart and you're loving yourself first. Like, I'm always like, that's at the forefront of every conversation I have with young people to this day. And I still work with high schoolers, and I just had a conversation a few months ago with a young person who was up to me about a relationship. And after our conversation, she was just really thanking me because I'm like, I just want to make sure you're doing what's best for you. And she wasn't even in a toxic relationship, but she wasn't happy. And I was just like,
Yeah.
you know what, you don't have to stick around and be unhappy. Like, and it doesn't mean you can't be friends with, the individual that you're talking to, but it does mean that you should take this time to focus on yourself if you're considering being in a healthier situation. So all of those things to say, like, I think it's very important that we create a space for vulnerability and safety for our young people to talk to us. And everybody isn't that person. Like, a lot of times young people don't feel comfortable talking to their parents, but it's important that parents do make sure they have someone in their life that they do feel comfortable talking to.
Mhm.
And that's so, so, so important. And I think it makes a world of change for our young people.
I think so as well. Thank you so much for that, Imani. And I mean, when you say creating a safe space, it needs to be safe because that's where vulnerability and then, that transformation really can happen. And that's where healing can happen too, and even further, the self love.
Mhm.
So, one thing that we have been asking all of our guests on the show is about their passion. You're super young and it seems like you found your passion way before I did. So, what is your advice to a young person that's saying, what is it that I want to do? What's my purpose? Like, how do you encourage and motivate them to stay on track and stay on that journey to keep seeking and asking the questions of what it is that they're here to do on earth?
Mhm. I definitely think that it's not something that should be rushed, or even I also, which this may be against popular belief, I don't think that is something that people should spend too much time trying to find. I think that it's something that you should allow to happen naturally.
Hmm.
There's one day you're going to be in this moment where you're doing this thing and you're going to be like, you're going to be able to do it without any feeling of stress, any feeling of just overwhelmed. You're going to love what you're doing so much to the point where like you look at the clock and hours have went by and you
Yeah.
absolutely love it. And I'm not going to say you won't ever be stressed working within your passion, because I get stressed doing my business all the time, but it's the good stress. It's the stress that's like, I want to get up and be stressed about this again tomorrow.
Yes.
I love it so much. And so I don't think that people should consume themselves with finding a passion. And it's not, in my opinion, I have several passions. Like I love working in the community. I love working with you. I love operating a business. I love encouraging people to find what they're passionate about. Like all of that is a part of my purpose here on this earth. And I think you find that as you let go of this pressure to find your passion and explore and live life and have fun. And I'm talking to myself right now too, because
You better speak because you're speaking to me too.
I definitely tell myself to just let go, have fun, live on the edge a little bit, try new things, move to a different state, listen to a new podcast, expose the podcast.
Hello.
Like, try things that you just normally wouldn't do. Go to a new restaurant by yourself, date yourself. Like you never know what kind of things you may explore just by simply trying something new. So I think all of those things lead you to your passion. And so I just say live life. Like that's my advice. Live life and your passion will find you.
Hey, you said it best. I don't think there's anything else to say behind that, Imani. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. I'll see you in a moment. You guys heard it best from Imani Ray. She was absolutely a delight, and she dropped so many nuggets, so much, not just for young people, but just for life in general. Live life, create spaces for our young people. If you are a parent and has a young child that or a young person that's not quite, opening up, maybe we might have to crack open the box and find a safe space for them to be open and to speak freely and be vulnerable and share things that are on their heart. And also another thing is we want to really thank Imani for coming in and sharing with us. All the things that she's just a lovely heart, and my heart is just overwhelmed. I am so in gratitude, and I thank you so much, Imani. I am Natalie Hayden, and we are Exposed to Podcast. Laverne will be joining me next week, so stay tuned for another episode. I hope you guys have a great and wonderful Wednesday. Thank you.